The table of contents on the instructions page indicates that there are 4 tabs at the end of this tool that summarize the results that are derived from the scores of the tabs that are asking the questions about how things are going on sustainability related topics. So there's one that summarizes the scores on core ESG or sustainability issues, those 18 things. There's another one that translates those scores into their associated primary SDGs so that you get scores on the related SDGs. There's another tab which also takes those ESG scores and maps them to their associated natural, human, and social capitals. So we can express these scores, the performance scores on sustainability issues, in 3 different ways, and then there's one that encourages you to take action. So let's take a look at what those tabs look like. We'll move over to what they are. They're at the end. So ESG scores. ESG scores at the top indicates that the 18 different issues that we assessed in the earlier tabs are shown here as a bar chart that shows how their scores compare relative to 100%. Where does this chart come from? It's automatically generated. Oh yes, just before we do that, not only does it show what those scores are on each of those, it gives an average performance on each of those. Then it adds in the bonus scores and gives you an overall score that's a little bit higher than the average of those, given the bonus scores for your positive impacts. Here's a table. This is the table that is automatically populated by the results of the tabs that you go through as you're filling in these questions, the environmental questions, the green ones, the blue ones on employees, and the aqua one on society. And you end up with an average performance, and a positive impacts bonus is added to that. That's the positive impacts we looked at in the walkthrough. And then you have an overall score of 67% in this particular case. So these are all sample examples of what the percents are. Notice they're all in purple cells because they're automatically populated and calculated for you from the previous tabs. There's an explanation of what the percents mean here, as well as an encouragement that if you would like to be able to portray these in different kinds of charts, maybe column charts or radar charts or perhaps a dashboard, you're encouraged to transcribe these scores into another graphic package and use those to generate more appropriate graphical representation of these results if that's helpful. So you've got a way of seeing how they compare to each other and how they compare to where you really want to be able to get to in order to show that you're doing no harm. Those are the ESG scores. The nice thing about this tool is it takes those scores and it generates automatically scores on the related SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So what that looks like, let's click on that tab. At the top, you see for each of the SDGs, SDG 1, 2, 3, all the way through to 17, what the scores on each of those are. Where did these come from? Summary scores as well. These came from the table that is automatically populated not from the tabs, but from down below, and I'll show you that in a second. Explanation of what the progress scores are, encouragement that you may want to take those results and use more sophisticated graphical packages to be able to portray them. Down below is the way in which those scores are derived. So these scores on each of the, in this case, the environmental issues are automatically populated from the worksheets in the earlier part of the tool. So these scores are there and they're mapped to their corresponding SDG with governance, because it's so important that all of these things also being included in the mix. So the average of the governance score and the energy score ends up to be 67% in this case, and that's your score on energy. Greenhouse gases maps to climate action plus governance divided by 2 gives you this, and so on. So what you're looking at here is the way in which scores on each of these SDGs, these are the 6 environmentally related ones, are calculated. And then there are the ones related to employees In a similar way, these are the SDGs that are most impacted by the way in which the company treats its employees. So you can see how those calculations are done, and the ones for the community or society as well. So these scores for each of these SDGs are what populate this table, this table up here, and that's the table that is used to generate the charts up above. So you have a graphical representation, a table representation, a more detailed derivation of how the company or organization is doing on the SDGs. If you're interested in expressing the scores or the performance of the company on sustainability relative to their contribution to the value of natural, human, and social capital, the non-financial capitals, there's another tab that leads you to that. So natural capital, human capital, social capital, the performance, the extent to which you're adding value rather than subtracting value from those capitals. The summary scores, again, average performance of those, add in the impact scores, overall score on all of the capitals. And then a derivation of how those scores were arrived at. Again, these are automatically populated from the previous sheets and aligned with their associated related capitals. So natural capital, environmental, human capital, employer-related, social capital, the ethical practices that affect communities and society, individual scores, collective scores, bonus score, overall score. And the meaning again, and graphical representation, encouraged to use other packages if that's helpful. So what we've got here, and these are optional, by the way. If you don't think that these are important to you, just take out this tab. And it's the same for the SDGs. But in many cases, organizations struggle with how they're going to show the extent to which they're contributing to the SDGs, and this is an easy way of doing that, and the ESGs, the sustainability related things. Notice that the last one is, what are you going to do with all of this? So taking action, and some guidance on how you might do that. The take action one reminds you that the way in which you prioritize those results and taking action on those results is going to depend on who they matter to. So if your senior management is particularly interested in one or more of those results, obviously those are the ones that you're going to want to focus on. Or if your banker or your lender is very focused, for example, on climate change, they're going to want you to improve your performance on greenhouse gas. Or customers and buyers, they might be particularly interested in a couple of sustainability issues. So you may want to pay attention to those as well. Or maybe social media is giving you trouble on some of the ways in which you're treating your employees, for example, so you might want to improve those. Or investors may have a particular interest in some of these, or governments or foundation and rankers. And so this is just a reminder that as you try to figure out which of these you're going to work on, you're probably not going to work on all of them. Obviously, this one kind of sticks out, so you'd probably want to work on the ones that stick out a little bit. But you also want to consider, since you're not going to probably do all of them at once, which of these are worthy of your attention because they are of interest to your important stakeholders. And if they're of interest to them, they're probably of interest to you. Underneath that guidance, there is a list of some of the resources that you may want to tap into as you're going through your action plan. But the reason that this is the last sheet is that it's fine to do the assessment, but it's even better to do something with the results and to strive to improve selectively which ones you think are going to be the most important for you to pay attention to. And then you can use the results of this one as sort of a baseline, do whatever you want to do on the others, and then do another assessment and see the way in which the scores are going to be improved as a result of that. So what you have is an opportunity to not only see what these things are, but take action on them. And that's the point of the whole tool in the first place. So, enjoy.